Hi, in this video I'm going to go over how to sew on a button for your half scale jacket. So I've already put on my front button, which had 2 holes on it, and when you're putting on a button you just want to make sure that you have a little bit of a shank underneath so that you have room for the fabric to sit in there so the button's not constantly stressed and pulling. So I'm going to show you how to make that shank. I'm going to be showing you how to do a 4-hole button and how to space it on your sleeve. Okay. So on my sleeve here, I have not yet marked the button placement. When you are doing a jacket, it is customary for menswear to have fake buttonholes sewn onto here that are never opened up. Occasionally you'll see them that are open, but usually they are not opened. They don't even go through the lining sometimes. So they'll just be on the fashion fabric, but not even go through the lining. That allows you to alter the sleeve, and by either removing those buttonholes completely or just removing 1 or 2, because sometimes it will have anywhere from 3 or 4 buttons. So if you're shortening it a little bit, you can take off 1 button and buttonhole and shorten that sleeve and then leave the other 3 intact. All right, so often those buttonholes are placed on a full-size garment 1 1/4 inches up and approximately 1/2 inch in. That'll be the center of your button placement on the sleeve, and then sometimes they are spaced so that there is a gap in between, like this one. Sometimes they have less of a gap. Sometimes they're touching completely, and sometimes they are actually overlapping just a tiny bit and kind of stacked on top of each other, which is a trend. So for this size of jacket, I am just going to mark this 1/2 inch up. So I'm just sliding my seam gauge to 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to place that red seam, the slider, on the bottom hem of my jacket and mark it. Okay. Then for these buttons, I'm going to space them 3/8 of an inch apart. That way they're just like they're close, but they're not quite touching. I'm going to keep going up that same amount on each one because I'm doing 3 buttons. And then I'm going to go in as well 3/8 of an inch. So again, I'm just going to put my red slider on the edge of my vent. And this is going on the upper vent side of your sleeve. So I have placed or marked all 3 of the centers of my buttonhole. And then I have pre-threaded some needles. Do go ahead and wax your thread and make sure that these aren't too long. You want to be sewing, not exercising, so you don't want it any longer than 1 length of your arm. Not both arms, just 1 arm. And then to start, to hide your knot, I'm going to just come in at the top of my X here. So because I'm doing a 4-hole button, I'm going to be going in just above and below each of these lines all the way around. If I was doing a 2-hole button, I would be on this line going in and out of the fabric. So I'm going to go in at the top right corner, and I'm going to go all the way through. This just secures your fabric and your button together really well. And then I'm going to come out at the bottom left corner, just because personally that's how I like to sew my button, is bottom left to right. And then I'm going to place my button on. And then when you're putting your button on, just make sure that often buttons look like a little bowl or a little saucer. So you want that little bowl up. Occasionally it's the other way, where this is the right side up, but often it's bowl side, like, or plate side up. And then I'm going to go through, and I'm going to do, on this one, I did straight lines across. I think on this one, I'm going to do X's just to show that you can do something different. And then that just means I'm going to go in exactly where I went in, where my knot is. And I'm not going all the way through to the lining. I'm just going in through the fashion fabric. I did pull that tight, but I am going to go and put my thumb underneath there, loosening it up just a little bit. That's what's going to give me that shank. Now, these, because they're not functioning, they don't actually need a shank, but on a functioning button, you do want that shank. Now, my knot tail is showing just a little bit because it's a bit long for this size of button. So I'm just going to trim that off so it doesn't keep sticking up through my hole. And again, so I'm going to pull it a little bit snug, but then put my thumb underneath. And again, I'm only putting my thumb underneath on this, even for demonstration. On a normal non-functioning button, I would not leave this much shank because otherwise it just catches. Okay, so you can see there that I have made an X. And I'm just going to repeat that. I'm going to go in and out of these holes 3 times. So I'm going to just cross over into my fabric, cross over, and into my fabric. Last time, from bottom left to top right, and from top left to bottom right. Okay, so now I want to just make this shank a little bit stronger, a little bit more secure. So I'm going to take my thread and I'm going to put my fingers on it and I'm going to flip it over, making a little loop. And I'm going to put this loop over my button and tighten down. And then what that's going to do is it's just going to make a tiny little piece of thread under there. So, and I'm going to repeat that one more time. So I'm going to wrap my thread over my fingers, flip it over my button, and pull tight, drawing in a little bit, creating that nice looking shank. And then I'm going to go down, so it kind of knots it and makes a shank at the same time. And then I'm going to go down through, and then this little yellow mark is where I came through all the way through on my very first stitch. And I'm just going to catch that and make a knot. And then I'm going to slide my needle through the fabric and give it a bit of a pull, creating some tension, cut it, and then when I smooth that out, my thread disappears and the tail's long enough so it doesn't work its way out. And I'm just going to make another knot and repeat that process for the last 2 buttons. So that's what my first button looks like with the nice X on it and the shank. And so now we're going to repeat this whole process. So going all the way through the fabric in that top right corner of my mark, and then back through on the bottom left corner, not too far away from the middle. Bigger buttons will need bigger amounts, slightly. And then I'm going to go into the exact same spot I went into with my knot and across to the left. So upper left corner. Just make sure it's not twisted and that it's straight. And even though I just tightened down, I can put my thumb underneath there, loosen it back up again. So top left, down, bottom right, bottom left, up, top right, across, top left, to bottom right, to bottom left. So now I've done 2 cycles of that, and I'm going to do it one more time each. Okay, then come out so that you can do your loops. So loop flip over your button, draw down tight around your button, loop, flip over your button, draw down tight around your button, through the fabric all the way to the back side. Catch that little piece of thread, make a knot, and hide your tail. Right? And you can have anywhere from 0 to 4 buttons. You know, there's no real rule about how many buttons you can have on your jacket sleeve, and how they're spaced. All right, last one. So I'm going to go all the way down in, pull tight, and again, that tail's way too long for this length of button, or this size of button. Oops, I gotta come back up through the fabric, I forgot. So, okay, so through my button. Like I said, you can make an X, you can make horizontal lines, vertical lines, you can make a box. You could even do an arrow going 1 diagonal and 2 horizontal lines. So you can have fun with this. You don't have to be same old, same old. Loop it, pull tight, loop it, pull tight, through to the back, catch your thread, knot it, and hide it. Okay, so that is with the X's, 2, and horizontally, all with just a small little shank underneath so that it fits through this thick layer of fabric and sits nice without puckering or pulling on the thread. Your next step would be to remove all your basting thread and press.